Part 3, here we go.
More deeply, this capacity to relate, the variability that is so often derided as an appeal to a hypothetically dangerous populism.
Being able to relate to people is equated to dangerous populism, said nobody ever. Being able to relate to people through mutual hatred and derision for the other or the systems in which you are embedded and refuse to take accountability for, that's the dangerous part, not the fact that you relate to people altogether.
Speaks to me of the paradoxical presence in Trump's character of a substantive degree of agreeableness, the personality trait most associated with empathy for other people.
Agreeableness, like how everyone who worked with or next to him agreed to flee his presence and begin joining super PACs and writing letters of how dangerous and incompetent he was. Yeah, agreeableness.
And one that seriously mitigates against the more pathological elements of the narcissism that can be associated with extreme extroversion.
The narcissism that can be associated, the extreme elements. Now, why belabor the extreme things that have already happened, like shit smearing on the halls of Congress, or impaling police officers, or continued election denial? Why consider any of that when we can just keep it abstract? And, you know, narcissists can have some extreme things, but don't you know he's also kind of agreeable? At least according to Peterson's analysis.
How can this be, given his rough and sometimes even bullying humor? Well, agreeableness subdivides into the aspects of politeness and compassion. Although they tend to co-vary, else would not unite to produce the trait, people can somewhat rarely be high in one and low in the other. This makes them somewhat harder persons to understand, but is something that is nonetheless possible. I believe that Donald J. is one of those people. He is certainly not polite. He knows how to behave, so is not merely unsocialized or accidentally gauche, but he frequently chooses not to.
So there's two things to really think about there as far as I'm concerned. One is how much weight the words "I believe" are carrying, right? We should never forget that all of this is an extension of Peterson's belief system. What you want to make of that belief system in the abstract, or its more explicit consequences, I'll leave to you. Yeah. Then he states that he knows how to behave, which I think is kind of the heart of all of this. If you know how to behave, and yet once you rise to these levels of power and privilege and whatever else, and you still persist in the behaviors that Trump has, apparently that's okay. I don't understand where it's going.
But he frequently chooses not to. This is part of what makes him so funny. The aforementioned Bill Burr is not polite. Louis C.K. is not polite. Tony Hinchcliffe of current Kill Tony fame is not polite.
All comedians are comedians doing a performance. Their lack of politeness is part of the performance. What do you even call it? Equivocation? False like, you're trying to give Trump the leeway of a comedian performing as though that is a reasonable thing to do, just as a thing. No.
Many comical people will say anything that comes into their mind, no matter what. If it is either true or funny or optimally both. Trump definitely falls into this camp.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail. Secretary Clinton.
He's threatened to jail a lot of people who come after him or who want to hold him to account. That's, at a certain point, it's not a joking manner. You think Louis C.K. or Bill Burr or Tony Hinchcliffe are going to make a comment like that in court if they were up against the bullshit? Oh my God.
It is clear from the personality and psychopathology literature that people tilt towards narcissism when they are extroverted and disagreeable. Trump is indisputably extroverted, and extremely so. He's also definitely low in politeness, but he simply would not be able to make contact with the so-called ordinary people that love him if he did not care deep in the blackness of his heart.
Did not care deep in the blackness of his heart. I honestly don't know what to say about that, but it is such a quote-worthy thing to reflect on, how you arrive there, or why you think you need to make an apologetic video for somebody whose heart you would describe as full of blackness, so much so that any remote care that you think you are also witnessing is buried somewhere deep in there. Okay.
I have a suspicion that his very impoliteness is at least in part a mask worn to shield him from the pain that such caring can produce.
Yeah, maybe. And then adults take accountability for that and don't do all the crazy shit that Trump does. They go, I've been wearing this mask and acting like a cunt. Maybe I should grow up and handle my own emotional well-being. Or, I don't know, use the millions and millions of dollars I have to find someone to help me. Not Trump.
This would make Trump a man whose gruffness is there to shield himself from the public exposure of his tender heart. There are many men who are like that. Now, I don't know Trump, except from a distance.
That's another. Put a giant pin in that one. This is all literally armchair analysis from somebody who, I don't know if I haven't checked because I haven't kept those kind of tabs on him, was on the verge of losing his professional license.
But I know many people who do. All of them have spoken to me of his hospitable nature in private.
Anecdote bullshit. Well, the people that I know say he's not so bad, so he must not be so bad. This is just the laziest form ever of like argumentation and or persuasive speaking. Well, I mean, the people that I know say he's not so bad. It's like when your frat brother gets accused of raping somebody and everybody in the frat house is like, well, I've never watched him rape anybody. We always just sit around and eat pizza and he's super jokey. Right. It's the same line of argument. I'm not saying that Trump's a rapist, even though he's a convicted one.
And of his proclivity to go out of his way for the people around him. This group of witnesses to his character includes people who are seriously not aligned with him politically, by the way.
So it's more true because somebody says, well, I'm not really about his politics, but I can affirm he's pretty cool, actually. Again, just more piling on of the anecdote bullshit, and it's supposed to really sell it that, oh, I wasn't a believer before.
It is also by no means obvious that Trump kisses up and kicks down. That tendency is a very damning sign indeed, particularly in someone who has genuine power and is simply not reported of Trump. This is something that appears to stand in marked comparison.
Kisses up and kicks down. It's not reported of Trump. I don't know what making fun of disabled people constitutes for Jordan Peterson, but that feels like if you're gonna adopt an up-down dichotomy or think that that's a way to frame the world in the first place, does it not count? I don't know. It's just one instance. Or how about bemoaning the price of a fucking Mexican's funeral? Was that not kicking down? Or is it just regular racism? I don't I don't know how you're parsing these things.
To Kamala Harris who is notoriously unpopular among her staff, current and former, and for precisely that reason.
Here's 3 articles I read on a few employees who are aggrieved with Kamala Harris. So it must be true compared to anything I would ever look up to show you Trump's behavior or people's perception of working with him. Brilliant.
Personality traits remain to assess with regard to the former president: that of neuroticism, the tendency to experience negative emotion, and conscientiousness, the tendency to work hard and diligently and to formulate and keep verbal contracts. Neuroticism.
Keep verbal contracts. Okay. We're going to move on to part 3. I'm going to upload this little section, but okay.